Hey, what's up guys? Tom from Positive Lead Diagnostics. Don't mind the fresh trim. Today we're working on a 2000 Volkswagen Beetle with a 1.8 turbo. It was towed in from another shop and all they said was it jumped time and it needs a cylinder head and timing belt. So let me get you a shot and I'll just crank it over and we'll listen to see what it sounds like. Need a jump box on it because it's dead, of course. Kind of sounded like it wanted to fire up. I think I'll just start by doing a cam crank correlation and we'll just go from there. And I can smell coolant. Alright, so cam sensor lives right here. And of course there's a cover. Get a pocket screwdriver and pop that off. So our channel 1 is going to be our cam sensor. Take a guess here. Go on this middle wire. And our crank sensor lives underneath, but the connector is right underneath the air pump. So our channel 2 is going to be our crank sensor. Turn our channel to about 10 volts. I think the cam sensor is a 12 volt. Move that down a little bit. And change our time. Let's do 1 second screen. All right. Crank it over. Get 720 of this crank here, right here. 1 rotation, 2 rotations of the crank, 1 rotation of the cam, and now what we need is a known good cam crank sync. From all the ones that I've looked at so far, this big tooth and this trailing edge on this second big tooth usually should be around that crank sync, and that looks pretty close. It may be slightly off, but need a known good. Go on IATN real quick. Okay, so here's one. Alright, so looking at ours, just seeing where this leading edge comes across this crank. So we'll take, there's this leading edge right here, or we can use this one. Hard to tell, but if I move it over, that edge is just right before that crank sync. So if I'm in the middle of the crank sync, that leading edge is just a little bit ahead. two small ones here. That's right in the middle. Two small ones here. It's pretty close to the middle. I don't think this thing is out of time, and honestly it sounds like it wants to start. Alright. Maybe relative compression using starter current, and put a sync on one of the control wires going to the coil. See how close it is to top dead center, and go from there. Okay, so taking the high amp probe, putting it on starter wire, and my ignition coil trigger on the control wire for the coil on cylinder 3, just to get a reference of where this coil was firing compared to top dead center. Let's crank it over. Must not have my trigger in all the way, but you can definitely see compression is all over the place. Put a little filter on this. Let's clean it up a bit. Compression all over the place. Low, high. But looks like it's occurring pretty close to top dead center. I do not think this thing is out of time. I can smell fuel, I can smell coolant. This cap is loose. No coolant in there. Or at least it's low. Yeah, it's just low. It's all wet, like it's leaking out of the overflow. runs. That level came up. Barely get that thing on. There's a ton of pressure in this reservoir over here. Knew it sounded like it wanted to run. Watch this pressure. Cap's super tight. Wow. I'll do that one more time. Now that it's quiet, you can hear it. Listen to this pressure release. Dude, this thing needs a head gasket. And then look at all this. It even smells like fuel. See if we can get it to shoot out of there. This one's pretty bad. Check this out. This thing needs a head gasket. That's pretty awesome. That would explain our compression. That's crazy. So pretty certain it needs a head gasket. I'm just gonna pull the coils out, pull the plugs out. We'll stick a borescope down in there and pressure test it. See if we can see any coolant coming out in there. Pretty confident that we're gonna find some. So it's the next test. Before we do that, I'm gonna install this tester, try to get a pressure reading off this reservoir. we got a little bit there. And our jump box is dead. Maybe not. Maybe it was just off. Let's do it again. Already at almost 2 bar. That's compression pressures entering the coolant system due to what I think is a faulty head gasket. It is still rising. So, alright, time to pull the coils, pull the plugs, and just stick a little camera down in there and see what we see. And we'll just add some pressure with this too. So, almost 2.5 bar was running for less than a minute. Let this pressure out. Nice. Alright, let me get these coils, plugs out, we'll take a look at them, take a peek down the cylinder. And of course, these ones are screwed in. Plugs are pretty hot and nasty looking. So about up to 1 bar. I can't even see in there. So I got this little Borescope with this 45-degree angle mirror on the end of it. This thing was pretty cheap. It was like 50 bucks at Harbor Freight, and it's actually got a decent picture. So I'm gonna take it down. And cylinder 1 is pushing out the coolant. It keeps fogging up the screen. Cylinder 2. Same thing. Ooh, there's cylinder 3. Cylinder 3 is pretty bad. Oh, you can't see that. Cylinder 3 is pretty bad. It's hard for me to show you because you can't see. It's too much of a glare. I don't know if you can see that. The whole top of this piston is wet. With cylinder 1, not too bad. It's still a little wet. Let's get number 2. Number 2 is wet, but number 3 looks the worst. All those white dots are coolant drops. Let's go to cylinder 4. Looks like cylinder 4 might be the worst. It's all coolant on the top of the piston. Alright, so I had to wait for this Beetle to cool down. This is cylinder 4. Before, all the coolant being in the cylinders was getting hot. It was steaming up the camera and I couldn't see. So this is cylinder 4, and that's right in line where the head gasket is. And you can see the stream of coolant coming down, and that's the top of the piston. So I do have a pressure tester on it right now, but you can see all that coolant right there and the stream coming down. So needs a head gasket. Alright guys, so not sure how far we're going to go with this car. Obviously the fix would be, a head gasket, or that would be the recommendation. Tearing the head off, you never know what you're going to find. Could be a warped head, crack in the block somewhere. There was a receipt for a coolant flange on the front seat, so maybe the coolant flange was leaking, all the coolant leaked out and it overheated. So not sure how far we're going to go, but definitely a bad head gasket, or crack in the block. However that coolant is getting into those cylinders, more than one, my guess would be the head gasket. Some of them worse than others. Looked like 3 and 4 were pretty bad. You can see our compression was all over the board, initially. Timing is on. Obviously the car started and ran. So waiting for an approval, tear the head off, do an inspection. Not going to do a video on the repair. I will take some pictures if I get the job, so you can see that airlock or that pressure in the reservoir after cranking it, after running it. It was, you could see all the bubbles. It looked like it was boiling, but compression pressures entering the coolant system. So I hope you guys enjoy this video, and thanks for watching.